Good morning. Hey, y'all take a seat. P.S. Y'all are terrible at picking up on cues to sit down. Just absolute online people, you can hear them all in the background, just a bunch of disrespectful church folk on a Sunday morning. I'm kidding. Honestly, I like talking to people. I totally get it. Man, so excited to be with y'all. My name's John. I serve as pastor here at the Springs. I want to say one thing. The announcements, Easter, there's going to be 2 services, 9 and 11, as Brittany shared. One of the things, though, the elders, we are doing everything we can to feel led to, hey, how do we get creative? How do we expand this space? Thank y'all for your creativity sitting in the back there. So Easter going to 2 services, that's just a one Sunday thing. It'll go right back to one service, 10 a.m. the weeks following that. That shared stuff around here in a glorious way is changing consistently. So the one thing we can promise is something else will change. But we love getting to tell people. We really do think a relationship with Jesus Christ changes everything. And we don't say that as like a simple platitude or like a simplistic Christian statement, but because he changed us. He changed me. He's changing me. He helps me. That's why we love getting together and getting to get after it like this. It's one of the reasons why I'm in particular really excited about the passage and where we're going to be today. Today's topic, it's deeply personal, but it's one of those, if you're a follower of Jesus, or even if you grew up around followers of Jesus or went to church, it's a topic that when you hear its theme, you can kind of just sit back and check out. Like there are things that immediately grab people's attention, and there are things that immediately kind of make them feel distracted. Things that can grab our attention are new, novel, shocking, scandalous. Things that can just make you just want to lean out and be distracted are things where you're like, I've heard this before. I've heard this before. I've heard this before. I think Christian folk, when it comes to talking about the theme and the idea of forgiveness, many of us can sit there and be like, oh, okay, I'm forgiven, so forgive. All right, heard this. And we kind of check out. It's fascinating to think about, though, right? Because if you come and maybe you're like, okay, I know talks on forgiveness. Maybe some of you've led Bible studies on forgiveness. Like you have given the talk, you've led the discussion on it. And you're like, okay, I've got it, I've done it, I get it, I'll do it. But I have the joy of hanging out with a ton of us. One of the greatest issues that we wrestle with, that I wrestle with, is forgiveness. There's way more hope, beauty, and power in this than what I think many of us come to capitalize on or personally realize. I want to start it out by sharing a story. In college, I was looking for something to do. I needed an activity. I joined my college's club rugby team. Has anybody here ever played rugby? Okay, nobody. Well, I had never played before that, okay? I'd played a ton of soccer growing up. I was a goalie, so it was one of the more physical positions. I played a ton of soccer. It was college. I'd always wanted to play rugby. I love tackling people. That's just very fun to me. And I was like, why not? Let's go do it. I went and joined the rugby team, which, by the way, brutal sport. Brutal sport. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know what to do. I know you take this ball, you run that way. When you get tackled, you're supposed to put the ball on the ground. A bunch of people come and huddle up over you. You pass the ball backwards, and then you kind of wrestle and fight and all this kind of stuff in a scrum, and you just keep running that way. That's still pretty much, even after having played the game, all the rules that I actually know, and you can only throw the ball backwards. I can remember I was in Atlanta, my first rugby match. It's club, so people think folks who are playing club sports in college are the ones who are naturally competitive, probably did something in high school and they really enjoyed it, but they weren't quite good enough to make an actual team. You get what I'm saying? So there's some skill, but usually it's like, you won the hard work award. We're really glad you're here. You know what I'm saying? So picture there's a whole bunch of people on that team. We go to play Kennesaw State University. So I was in Georgia, Kennesaw State University, way bigger. We're Emory, smaller, private school. We go to play them. I can remember, one, we lost the game entirely, right? I can remember playing this match. There's a moment, and I forget exactly what happened. I had a ball. The bad guy had a ball. I don't remember exactly. But we come. I don't know the rules. We come, he tackles me, I tackle him, we end up on the ground, we come up, and we are wrestling and fighting over this ball, right? It's rugby. So in rugby, you can really like go after it. But it's at this point, what rugby has is a referee. Why? You need order in the midst of chaos. We're wrestling over this ball. I hear the referee blow the whistle. The referee is coming to run. I've played years of soccer. In soccer, it's a bunch of pretty boys or attractive women. It sounds strange to say pretty girls for some reason, right? And they come, and you can kind of get in each other's face, but it's all talk. The referee like separates you, all that kind of stuff. Well, I come, the referee's here, and I just immediately, why? Because I'm an idiot. I just start talking smack to the guy. He's bigger than me. He knows what he's doing, but I'm an idiot. So I say something, the referee comes, because I immediately think, okay, there's a ref here, there's safety. It's like a lifeguard in the deep end of a pool that just showed up when you're about to drown. They come, referee puts arms between, I say something, and homeboy or grown man on like 7 victory laps in college just reaches past the ref and jacks me in the face. Just lays me out. I don't think I fell to the ground. I'm very tough, right? Just want to humble brag. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. But he comes, hits me, and immediately I just turn. I've never played rugby. I've only played soccer. And I just look at the ref and I go, red card! Like, out! Not even playing. Not even playing. I'm sitting there and I'm like shell-shocked. The ref takes the ball, sets the ball down, blows the whistle. Game just keeps going. And I remember standing there like, what just happened? He just punched me. There is no justice. There is no penalty. There is no foul. That is not right. I will not stand for this. And I promise you, nobody cared that I was upset. My team moved on. There was no, we got John's back. No, there's none of that. We would have gotten our tails whooped. That's why, right? The other team, they just took it, and the game kept going. Here's the reason I start with that. He should not have hit me. That is not, I looked it up, allowed in the rules of rugby. That is not permissible. There should have been justice. There should have been action. In that moment, I'm like, no. This needs to be corrected. This needs to be fixed. Whole thing just kept going. In that moment, I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I guess I can just keep playing or stay here fixed in this moment and be upset. Just kept playing the game. Here's the reason I share this. It's an oversimplistic view. But in that moment, a wrong is committed. There's no justice to be found. And then everything just keeps moving. What am I supposed to do? See, if you're a follower of Jesus, we come and we talk about this word, forgive. In its simplest terms, what forgive means, it means to free someone of a debt they owe you. A real debt. A sincere debt. An actual injustice, whether it be really minor, like my club rugby game, or it be the severity of some of the real injustices that have been done to you. See, and if you're a follower of Jesus, we can come and we can actually use this forgiveness, this freeing someone of a debt, and we can be really cruel with it. We can come and use it to like spiritually guilt trip and shame people. And into like this position of where, hey, you just need to move on. It's over. Let bygones be bygones. Forget the past. Move on. Sweep it under the rug. Just deal with it. Fallen world. So sorry. Move on. That's not right. That's not right. But we also know, like, the other extreme can't be true. Like, for every wrong, you cannot come and have judge, jury, and perhaps executioner. You can't come and arbitrate every evil. So if you're here and you're a follower of Jesus, you know you are called to forgive. You know you are called to move towards forgiveness. But why? And more importantly, how? See, we all have different backgrounds, different experiences. Some of you come from environments where the hardest place to forgive starts in your family of origin. Some of you sit here, and the hardest place for you to forgive is in your family. It's in your marriage. It's with your spouse. It's to your parent. Or it's to the coach that was supposed to be a trusted person that took advantage of trust. Some of us, real severe trauma. And then some of us, when we come to forgiveness, the great pain that we feel was, well, man, when I asked that girl out and she rejected me. Both are working through in a sense of forgiveness, but at very different places. Here's the reason I'm sharing this. Jesus Christ calls his people to forgive. It matters why. It matters how. Christians can be cruel in how they call one another to forgive. It can be invalidating. It can basically be, hey, I need you to forgive so I can emotionally be free and move on. So I'm calling you to do something, really, so I can be free. And Christians, what can seep into even the church, that's too much. Hey, God's a God of justice. You sit in that. You hold on to that. And you let his justice fuel your sense for personal vengeance. We can err in a lot of ways. But forgiveness can be hard. It can be confusing. It can be tricky. And I think if we're honest, for many of us, forgiveness can feel, I want to use this word, reckless. Reckless. If you're with us last week or the past few weeks, here's what we've been working. We've been working our way through the Gospel of Matthew. We've been in chapter 18. Jesus, he's giving his 4th out of 5 sermons in the Gospel of Matthew. In this 4th sermon, he's teaching to the community of faith, to believers. He's teaching to the church, his followers. He's come and he started out with this beautiful set of, hey, what needs to mark you? Sincere humility, a real sense of you were insignificant and unworthy, and yet God made you worthy, gave you significance. That's your greatness. But then he comes and he says, but hey, here's how y'all are to relate and to live with one another. And the first thing Jesus comes swinging out of the gates after is sin. He talks about how here's how you and I, as followers of him, have to deal with sin in your own life. Cut off the hand, tear out the eye. He went from deal with sin in your own life, you have to address it in the lives of one another. That was last week. Last week, we talked about this whole sense about how God in his love, he'll leave the 99 to find the one, how he rejoices in repentance. So he's told us you got to deal with sin. He's told us we have to address sin in one another. And today, he's going to remind his people, you have to forgive it. You have to release the debt. But for many of us, that feels overly simplistic, unkind. You don't know my story. You don't know what she did to me. You don't know what he did to me. And it can almost feel unjust, or to say it differently, reckless. The word we used for this last week was prodigal. Prodigal is when you come and you can expend resources lavishly, somewhat wastefully or recklessly. We talked about prodigal love last week. Today we're going to talk about seemingly reckless forgiveness. We're going to be in Matthew 18. We're going to look at a famous passage, a famous parable. We're going to look at verses 21 through 35 of Matthew 18 as we look at this seemingly reckless forgiveness. We're going to break it out in two thoughts. The first that we're going to see is the standard. What's the standard? And the second we're going to see is the story. Jesus is going to use a parable. He's going to use a picture. He's going to use a hypothetical scenario as he just weaves a story to put in your imagination and mind the point of the principle he's trying to teach. What may seem reckless might in fact be righteous. Y'all with me? Okay, grab your Bible. I'm going to read 18:21. We'll just stop at 22. Verse 21. So Jesus, he's been giving this sermon inside of a house. He's teaching to his disciples. There would have been female followers likely gathered around him. They're sitting on chairs. They're at a table. They're leaning up against walls. They've come in. He's given this teaching about how his church, which is a people, it's not a place, it's not a building. A church is a people of believers. He's saying, here's how you got to care for one another. It's coming to the end of his sermon, and Peter comes up, and Peter, in this way, he's going to ask Jesus this question about, hey, how many times should I forgive? Peter thinks he's going to give the right answer, and Jesus is going to show him it's at a whole nother level. Then Peter came up to him. Lord, hey, Jesus, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 77 times. Some of you, your translations, it may say 7 times 70. That'd be 490. It may say 7 times 70. It's just one of those, which numbers is he talking about? It's a fascinating thing here. Peter comes to ask a question, and Jesus answers. His question is about forgiveness. And right here, what Jesus shows is Jesus shows a seemingly reckless standard of forgiveness. I'll show you. Peter comes up and he says, hey, Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother? Here's why this really matters. Peter has said, hey, how many times should other followers of Jesus, when they come and they hurt me, when they come and they take advantage of me, when they come and they try to wrong me, malign me, slander me, insult me, degrade me, take advantage of me, steal from me, curse me, betray me, how many times should I forgive them? And then Peter, he says, is it 7 times? Here's why this answer was a big deal. First century Jewish rabbis, they would go and they would teach the standard number of how many times you should forgive someone, 3. 3 strikes, you're out. They would actually take this based on a teaching out of the book of Amos, and they'd kind of twist it to make it this. They would say 3. Peter coming to Jesus and saying 7 is like Peter saying, hey, Jesus, I know, I've been hanging out with you. It's like everybody else's standard is here. Your standard's here. And then Peter's like, you know what? 7. 7's a big deal number to God. 7, it means wholeness, completion, perfection. You know what, Jesus? I bet it's not 3. I bet it's 7. He's like turning, looking at the crowd like, see that, guys? I'm very spiritual. I don't know if you know this, but other people are 3. Jesus and I, we really think it needs to be more than that. We're kind of 7s here. 7s, that's our standard. He really would have thought in that moment, like, gold star Peter. He's trying. Respect to Peter, right? Because you got to think, in that moment, for his whole culture, to say 7, it's not just like, oh, that's so small. That's radical. That would have been, whoa. You're telling me the Roman that steals from me, you want 7? You're telling me the man that slept with my wife, you want 7? You're telling me the employer that dehumanizes me, you want 7? How dare you, Peter? That would have been the tone. And then Jesus says, hey, Peter, no, it's not 7. 7 times 70, or 77. Whether you think in that moment the original Greek is saying the number 77 or 490, the principle behind it is the same. Jesus is saying it's innumerable. It's incomprehensible. It's not at number 78 that all of a sudden you're like, that's it. Line in the sand, walls up, I'm done with you. It's not at number 491. In order to do that, you'd literally have to keep a record of wrongs and track it, and then you violate other verses. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, no. It's infinite, man. You just keep forgiving. That seems reckless. See, in that moment, Jesus says that. They had the same experience as we had. Brokenness of humanity, injustice, trauma, oppression, parental figures that should protect, stealing. They had all that. That's not new. They would have sat there and they would have said, whoa, okay, Jesus, like, I get it. Like, forgiving people, like, you're all about love. I hear you, but that's just too much. One, that's not fair. That is not fair. 2, that's not justice. God is a God of justice. God is a God of justice. No, Jesus. That's like a partial truth. That's not a whole truth. Or 3, Jesus, you just don't get it. Like, you don't know the abandonment. You don't know the betrayal. You don't know the trauma. You don't know the suffering. They probably wouldn't have said it because he's Jesus, but you and I, here's how we feel. It would evoke a sense of like, the fact you'd even say that? How dare you? How dare you? A famous story of forgiveness, I imagine some, if not many of you have heard. We perhaps all know about the atrocities that took place within the women's Olympic gymnastic team by Dr. Larry Nassar, where he assaulted and molested countless, they say at least over 200 female gymnasts. You perhaps saw, or maybe you heard, there was a gymnast who, at his indictment, gave a testimony. In that, her name is Rachel Den Hollander. She extended something that seems reckless, unfair, unjust. This was her language directly to Larry Nassar, the man who had assaulted her and countless others. Rachel Den Hollander, she said to him, should you ever reach the point of truly facing what you have done, the guilt will be crushing. Rachel Den Hollander is a follower of Jesus Christ. This is what makes the gospel of Christ so sweet. It extends grace and hope and mercy where none should be found. It will be there for you. I pray you experience the soul-crushing weight of guilt so that you may someday experience true repentance and true forgiveness from God, which you need far more than forgiveness from me, though I extend that to you as well. That's not fair. You could argue in that moment she wanted more justice. I don't understand. It's seemingly reckless to forgive at this standard. So it really matters when Jesus says forgiveness, what is it? And what is it not? We've said this already, but what is forgiveness? Forgiveness, it's first and foremost, it is freeing someone from a debt that is owed you. There's a real debt. There's a real wrong. There's a real atrocity. There's a real trauma. There's a real pain. There's a real offense. And it's freeing. But forgiveness is an interesting thing. See, biblically, you can teach forgiveness by what it is, but it's also one of those where it's helpful to say forgiveness, you can teach it by what it's not. Because so many folks, even well-intended church folk, we could twist it. We put together, here's a list of many things that forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not excusing sin. It's not saying that what someone did to you is not a big deal and that now everything is okay. That is not forgiveness. It's not sweeping under a rug. The second thing, forgiveness is not freeing the guilty of a demand for justice. I watched a gal, different story, and I think I may have shared this, dear friend of mine, like one of my closest friends after I'd become a follower of Jesus Christ. This is a serious story. She was at home, just taking a shower by herself. She lived with two other females. They weren't home. A man broke in, violently took her, and assaulted her. I sat in a courtroom at his indictment where he was unbroken, unrepentant, where she read to him a letter where in it she did not absolve him of the consequences of his sin. Forgiveness is not relinquishing the reality of justice. It's just entrusting justice to someone else. Where he was given 88 years. And in that, she read to him, I hope you find the forgiveness I found. Statistically, 1 in 5 men, 1 in 3 females have been sexually assaulted. I'm so sorry. It's wrong. Your abuse was wrong. That injustice is wrong. Forgiveness is not saying it was okay. Forgiveness is not denying hurt or stuffing your anger. Forgiveness is not a feeling. Forgiveness, it is a choice. It is a choice. And it's a choice that is repeatedly, perhaps daily, chosen again. It's not cheap. It's not simple. It's real. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's not the idea where you ever have to act like that didn't happen to you or that did not impact your life nor your story. Forgiveness is not trusting them again. You can forgive someone and not have trust for someone. You can forgive someone and biblically realize, hey, trust is earned through action. You can forgive and still have a righteous, wise boundary. Forgiveness is not you saying, I am your perpetual doormat. That's not forgiveness. And then forgiveness is not a final thing. I know it's a long list. It has nothing to do with forgiving yourself. People talk about how I just have a hard time forgiving myself. You don't need your forgiveness. Your forgiveness, with all due respect, means nothing. But what if, just what if, there was a God in heaven who did have forgiveness for you? You don't need to reach down within and accept something within you. You need to accept it from him. That's what cleanses. See, here's the thing, guys. This is seemingly reckless. Y'all get that? 7 times 70. How often do I forgive them when they sin against me? You just keep doing it. No. No. You don't get it. You don't get it, which is exactly why Jesus follows up with this parable. He sets a standard, and then he tells a parable. He tells a story because he wants to make it emotional and visceral. Let's continue on, and we'll read this famous parable. It's longer, 23 through 35. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king. King here is the God figure. To a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. All right, we got debts. We're going to pull them all in. I'm calling all my debts in. When he began to settle, one was brought to him who owed 10,000 talents. So 1 talent was equal to 20 years' wages. 1 talent, 20 years' wages. So this is equal to 200,000 years' wages. How long would it take the average laborer to pay that back? 2,870 something lifetimes. It's meant to represent the same thing as 7 times 70 or 77. It's incomprehensible. It's innumerable. Since he could not pay, his master ordered him to be sold with his wife and children and all that he had, and payment to be made. So the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, begging him, pleading with him, have patience with me. I will pay you everything, which is crazy. He can't. And out of pity for him, the master of the servant released him, forgave him his debt. But this is Act 2. We just saw Act 1, where what you saw was a begging debtor, a pleading borrower. Now it goes to Act 2, where you're going to see a cruel lender, a refusing creditor. Act 2. But when that same servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. That's 3 months' wages. 3 months' wages. So this would be like he's owed $12,000, right? Which is serious cash, by the way. He's owed $12,000. He's just been forgiven. I've seen everywhere estimates from like hundreds of millions to like 3 trillion. Most reasonable ones seem to be about 6 billion, right? And this is back before like the Elon Musks of the world existed, to where billion was like unfathomable. It's like a Googleplex number or whatever that thing is, right? He's saying, all right, 12,000 versus 6 billion. Uncomparable. 100 denarii. But seeing his fellow servant, seizing him, he began to choke him, saying, pay what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down, pleaded with him. Have patience with me and I will pay you. He refused and went and put him in prison until he should pay the debt. Act 1, a begging borrower. Act 2, a cruel and refusing lender. Act 3, righteous judgment. When his fellow servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed. They went and reported to their master all that had taken place. Then his master summoned him and said to him, you wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. should you not have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you? Now the master's angry. And in his anger, his master delivered him to the jailers. The original Greek, that word there, it's actually torturers. Delivered him to the torturers until he should pay all his debt. So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart. Jesus ends this teaching to this room of his disciples, his followers, and he says, if you don't truly forgive from the heart, what was done to that cruel lender will be done to you. It's a heavy moment, like it's intense language. What we're seeing here is this seems reckless to forgive people. That's why the standard there is like, no, that's standard. It can't be real. And then Jesus comes and he says, okay, no. I'm going to tell you a story where you come and there is a God in heaven. He's the king. It's the kingdom of heaven is like. He's the king. And you and I, church folk, we owe him 100,000 talents, innumerable, a debt you can't pay. He's holy. He's perfect. We've offended him. We deserve justice. You're right. It's not fair to forgive the first servant. Justice wouldn't have been had on that first servant. It might even be just a little too much to bear. But the first servant's forgiven. But that first servant goes and says, hey, grace for me, but justice for thee. You see the language escalate through the parable, where if you see it, the servant is brought to God. You then see God and the servant talk. That's Act 1. Act 2, the language escalates. That servant goes and seeks out another servant that owes him. They don't talk. He comes and he seizes. And from seizes, he chokes. Jesus is giving a graphic picture of like a man taking someone, choking them up against a wall, looking in their face, saying, you pay what you owe me. You took from me. You hurt me. I found you. You pay what you owe me. You know that like anger? That like sense of, okay, this was wrong. I'm going to make it right. This was wrong. You won't hurt me again. This was wrong. I'll make sure you never hurt anyone again. Jesus completely understood the severity of what is at stake when it comes to forgiveness. Cruel lender throws him in jail. Though forgiven, he could not forgive. The story continues. Fellow servants come and they're like, whoa, that's unjust. They tell the king. The king summons him and says, you wicked servant. It's the reality. Your actions have shown your character, your nature. I see the real you, servant. And then the king hands them over to the jailers or the torturers and says, you will stay there until you pay what you owe. How much did he owe? Infinite, unfathomable, immeasurable, incomprehensible. Pay. Jesus is meant to right here show us a few things about forgiveness as he closes the story with severe teaching. He's shown us his standard, and it seems reckless. He's given us this story that seems ruthless. But what's embedded within it? Here's just a few of the themes that come out. you and I have a tendency when it comes to forgiving others to be far more severe with people than God is with us. We all love grace and mercy for me, but justice for thee. See, though forgiven, he comes and he even escalates it. He takes it to another level. There is a brokenness to where you and I say, you won't hurt me. A second thing that we see here, and this is true, especially like Southern culture, Bible Belt, the South. Do you see that our ability to forgive or inability is directly connected to our self-righteousness? I went through something. I became a follower of Jesus, and then I went through a Christian discipleship ministry called Regen. And in that, there's a process where you come and you do what's called a moral inventory, where I looked at my life. This was back in 2014. I looked at my life and I exhaustively saw the ways I had hurt people and the ways that I had been hurt by people. This was 2014, and in small font, I had 12 pages. 12 pages of wrongs. Many of them, huge things that I had done. Moments where people will remember the evil that I brought. And there's moments that I don't even remember. But they do. Our inability to forgive others is directly connected to a sense of, but I'm not that bad. Maybe your debt before God, right? Maybe mine, total 10,000 talents. Maybe yours. Let's say you're better than me, okay? That's not a high bar, but let's say it's true. Your debt is still 9,999 talents. You got no shot. It's a beautiful thing, though, because showing the crushing weight of debt, it also teaches how the idea of penance, I'm just going to work my way back to you, God. I'm going to be a better version. I'm going to try harder. I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to cuss. I'm never going to look at porn. I'll never raise my voice. I will just read my Bible every day, and then I'll finally get my act together. I'll finally be the person you want me to be. I'll finally be righteous. Is stupid. Penance is not only ungodly, it's wildly unbiblical. It's arrogant to think you stand any chance to work your way back to him. No. You and I, we deserved prison, just prison. Freedom is what he gave. Our inability to extend forgiveness sits in, I think I'm a better person than you. Woe to you. A few more thoughts. You can forgive people that truly have wronged you. This $12,000, that's a severe thing. That's like 25% of a year's salary. If someone took that from me and my family, I would have great offense. Some of you, from minor to traumatically major, have real hurts. This isn't just a fix it, make a choice, flip a white switch, move on, and it's forgotten. But it is saying there is nothing in your life that by the power of the Holy Spirit, God can't move you forward. Forgiveness brings healing. It's ironic. To live in unforgiveness, you guys ever heard the adage, like the preaching thing? It's like drinking poison hoping somebody else dies. Right? Okay, maybe some of y'all, I once saw a guy, like he came and he lit a cigarette on stage, and he just went up there and he's like, took a long drag, right? Long drag, and then blew it out. And he said, not forgiving is like smoking cigarettes, hoping you kill them with secondhand smoke. That's just dumb. It's foolish. Forgiveness is meant to bring healing. Who's the primary person that you free? It's you. It helps me not live in the past. It helps me not have my present determined by my past. And it helps me move forward. Is that this easy, simplistic, sterile thing? No, it can be heart-wrenching. Final thing, forgiveness means trusting that God will bring justice. Here's the thing. When I think about God forgiving me, when I think about having to forgive others, I'm like you. I've hurt some people. And some people have really hurt me. My story is not your story. Your story is not mine. But there's real pain. And there's a real sense in forgiveness. It's like, okay, God, I'll give you justice. And I'm going to trust you deal with it. I'm going to trust you take care of it. But here's the thing. I'm so thankful when it came to my life. He didn't give me justice. If there was justice, I wouldn't be married. Or if I was married, man, I would have wrecked my marriage. If there was justice, I would still be an anxious, depressed wreck. If there was justice, he wouldn't have come and saved me, forgiven me, set me free, called me new, sent me to a different way, made me a new man. He wouldn't have given me his Spirit, God himself, to lead me. He would have said, all right, you reap what you sow. Justice. Here's the thing. The way followers of Jesus forgive is we remember, dude, we were forgiven so much. You caused great pain. And yet the way he looks at you, he says, hey, your great pain, your inventory, your shame, you don't work your way. I'll go and I'll die for it. I will go, I'll break my body. Your shame, it'll be gone. The things that you did, gone. You're my child. What marked you won't mark you. The trauma where you can come. I have 6 names right here on one page. They will remember the things that I did. Gone. I won't remember it, John. As far as the east is from the west, I'll look at you and your 10,000 sin, your infinite sin, and I'll die for it. I'll go and I'll pay the penalty. See, it's this moment where in the story there's the God figure, and then there's one who will have to pay. Christ went and he endured the 10,000 talent torment. Torn from the Father. Body broken. Blood shed for you. Do you know why you and I can forgive? Because he means this. He so means this about you. I am completely forgiven. I am absolutely righteous. I am blameless. I am holy. I am new. I am a son. I have a hope. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to see him. I'm going to hug him. He's my big brother. His Holy Spirit leads me. I'm not the same. Can I still sin? Yes. Will I be repenting and saying, will you forgive me until glory? Yes. I am forgiven. You can't take it from me. I can't lose it. It's amazing grace. And because he gave it by the power of his Spirit, Church, we have to work towards giving it.